Ambassador Khor'vax watched in paralyzed horror as the K'tharan Matriarch, apex predator whose species hunted sapiens for sport and ate their wounded, gently placed her 3 cubs into human Sarah Jackson's arms, purring with complete trust. "Someone stop this!" Khor'vax's translator shrieked, his scales flashing distress red across his entire body. According to YouTube analytics, 98% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, the human will be torn apart. But Sarah was already cradling the cubs against her chest, making soft cooing sounds. "Oh, aren't you just precious? Look at those little faces. Yes, you are. Yes, you are." The Galactic Predator Summit's emergency session devolved into chaos. Xenopsychology expert Lirana's crystalline form shattered a chair as she lunged forward. "Matriarch K'sara, retrieve your young immediately. Humans are not approved caretakers for..." The K'tharan Matriarch, 3 meters of corded muscle, titanium hard claws, and a jaw that could crush starship hull plating, growled. Not at Sarah, at Lirana. A deep protective rumble that made every predator species in the room instinctively back away. "She is safe, Pack," K'sara said in her species' harsh dialect, the translator struggling with the concept. "Smell safe. The soft human makes good protection feelings." Khor'vax felt his 3 hearts hammering against his ribs. K'tharan didn't trust anyone with their cubs. Last year, K'sara had personally disemboweled 7 Confederation diplomats for making eye contact with her young. 7 trained ambassadors, dead in seconds because they'd violated the sacred space around K'tharan cubs. And now this human, this small, soft creature, with no claws, no venom, no natural defenses, was holding those same cubs while the matriarch purred. "This violates every protocol." Zilax, the child development specialist, was frantically pulling up documentation on his datapad. K'tharan maternal aggression is absolute. They kill their own mates for approaching cubs too quickly. The human should be dead already. Sarah adjusted her grip on the cubs, who were chirping happily and nuzzling into her kindergarten teacher sweater. "Hey guys, maybe don't yell. You're scaring the babies. It's okay, sweeties, the loud aliens won't hurt you." One of the cubs, the largest with emerging fangs already visible, reached up with a tiny paw and patted Sarah's cheek. The gesture was gentle, trusting, completely impossible. "By the ancients," Khor'vax breathed, "it's showing submission behaviors." "To a human." "Not submission," K'sara corrected, her massive head tilting as she watched Sarah with something that looked disturbingly like maternal approval. "Recognition. She is safe, Pack. Den mother. The cubs know." "But how?" Lirana's voice cracked with academic desperation. "Humans aren't registered as compatible caretakers for any apex predator species. Your pheromone markers should trigger protective aggression. Sarah Jackson should read as threat to your cubs." Sarah was now playing peekaboo with the middle cub, covering her eyes with her hands. "Where'd I go? Where'd I go? There I am!" The cub squealed with delight, a sound that K'tharan cubs supposedly only made in the presence of their birth mother. "This is a galactic security incident," Khor'vax announced, trying to regain some control over the situation. "We need to understand what's happening before..." The chamber doors opened. More predator species entered, escorted by security. And they were all carrying their young. The Zaxthari broodmother slithered in, her serpentine form coiled protectively around 4 hatchlings. Behind her, a Vrexkal pack leader carried 2 pups in his combat-scarred arms. Then came the Thulkari, the Morgesh, the Kasha, species after species, each one documented as having absolute violent maternal instincts. They were all moving towards Sarah. "No!" Lirana threw herself between the approaching predators and the human. "Emergency Protocol 7. This is unprecedented. We don't understand what's..." K'sara growled again, louder this time. The other predator parents joined her, a symphony of threatening sounds that normally preceded mass slaughter. But they weren't threatening Sarah. They were threatening anyone who got between them and the human. Let them pass, Sarah called out, her voice remarkably calm for someone surrounded by the galaxy's most dangerous parents. It's okay. They just want their kids to feel safe, right? The Zaxthari broodmother nodded, a gesture she'd learned from human diplomats. Yes, soft human has safe smell, like nest warmth, like home feeling. I need to sit down, Zilax whispered, his usual professional composure completely shattered. This isn't possible. Apex predator species don't share parenting instincts. They don't recognize cross-species caretaker markers. They certainly don't all agree on a safe caretaker who isn't even from their evolutionary track. Sarah had somehow acquired 6 more cubs in the last 30 seconds. The Zaxthari hatchlings were wrapped around her legs, chirping, while the Vrexcall pups climbed onto her shoulders. She was laughing, actually laughing, as a tiny Thulkari cub tried to eat her hair. Okay, that's not food, sweetie. Let's not eat Miss Sarah's hair, please. Khor'vax watched his entire species security protocol crumble into dust. The Varesh, his people, had strict regulations about human interaction with their young. Strictly forbidden. Humans were predators themselves. After all, apex hunters from a death world. You didn't let predators near your vulnerable offspring, but looking at Sarah, surrounded by a dozen predator cubs from species that had nothing in common except their willingness to kill for their young, and they were all calm, happy, safe. What are humans? He whispered to himself. Sarah glanced up, noticed him for the first time, and smiled. Oh, hi. Sorry, I didn't mean to cause trouble. I'm Sarah Jackson. I teach kindergarten at the Human Diplomatic Compound. Are these all your cubs? They're absolutely adorable. Adorable. She just called the offspring of the galaxy's most dangerous predators adorable, and the parents were agreeing with her. We need answers, Lirana said, her crystalline structure still trembling with shock. We need to understand this now, because either our entire understanding of predator psychology is wrong, or humans are something we've never encountered before. Can't it be both? Sarah asked cheerfully, then returned her attention to the cubs. Now, who wants to play a game? Does anyone know how to play Simon Says? The cubs responded with enthusiastic chirps, growls, and squeaks. Khor'vax felt reality itself shifting around him. This wasn't supposed to be possible, but it was happening anyway. Within 20 minutes, the Predator Summit Chamber had transformed into something that broke every xenopsychological model in the database. 43 more predator species had arrived, and they were all bringing their cubs. This is impossible, Lirana whispered, her scanners running continuously across the scene. Predator maternal instincts should trigger defensive aggression when another species approaches their young. It's hardwired. Universal. Absolute. Sarah was now playing peekaboo with a Khor'vathi cub, a species whose adults had acid for blood and could phase through solid matter. The cub giggled every time she uncovered her face, its tiny mandibles clicking with joy. Peekaboo! I see you! The Khor'vathi broodlord stood 3 meters away, watching with what could only be described as contentment. His species had once eaten an entire survey team for landing too close to their nesting grounds. Zilax's datapad was scrolling numbers so fast they blurred. Current count, 127 apex predator species represented. Cubs in direct human contact, 214. Documented aggressive incidents, 0. He looked up, his 4 eyes wide with shock. 0. This statistical anomaly has a probability of... It's not an anomaly, Khor'vax interrupted, his scales still flashing alarm colors. It's something we don't understand, which is worse. Hey, does anyone have snacks? Sarah called out, gently disentangling a Thulkari cub from her sweater. These little ones are getting hungry, and I don't have my usual classroom supplies. Maybe some juice boxes, graham crackers. Every adult predator in the room went silent. She wants to feed them, a Vrexcal pack leader rumbled. Our young? Oh, well, yeah, Sarah said, as if this were obvious. It's getting close to snack time, and hungry kids are cranky kids. Trust me, you want to feed them before the meltdown starts. Lirana's crystalline form actually cracked slightly from stress. Feeding young from another species you can't just, the nutritional requirements alone would require. I've got compatible rations in my ship, K'tharan announced, already moving toward the exit. Protein-dense, safe for most. Carnivore cubs. Will that work, Den Mother? Perfect. Thanks so much. Sarah was organizing cubs into a circle on the floor. Okay, everyone, we're going to practice sitting nicely while we wait for snacks. Can everyone show me your best sitting? The cubs, creatures designed by evolution to be perfect killers, sat down in a surprisingly orderly circle. Oh, good job! Such good listeners! Khor'vax felt his world tilting sideways. Zelax, are you seeing this? The child development specialist was taking frantic notes. She's using positive reinforcement, basic early childhood education techniques, and they're responding, across species, across evolutionary tracks. Cubs don't respond to non-parent instruction. They don't have the neurological framework for. A small fight broke out between two cubs, a Zaxthari hatchling and a Morgesh pup, both reaching for the same toy that Sarah had produced from her bag. Teeth were bared, claws extended. Hey, no biting, Sarah said firmly but gently, separating them. We use our words. Can you tell me what's wrong? The Zaxthari hatchling hissed. The Morgesh pup growled. I know you're upset, but we don't bite our friends. Use your words. What do we say when we want something someone else has? There was a pause. Then, remarkably, the Morgesh pup made a sound that its translator interpreted as, please. Excellent. Good job using your words. Sarah handed the pup the toy. And you know what? We can share. 5 minutes each, okay? Then we switch. Both cubs accepted this ruling without further conflict. By the 7 hells, Khor'vax breathed. She just mediated a territorial dispute between apex predator young, using verbal negotiation. Lirana's scanners were going haywire. Ambassador, I'm picking up something. Sarah's pheromone signature. It's triggering recognition markers in every predator cub's neurological system. Not exactly maternal markers, but something close. Something that says, safe adult, in a language that crosses species barriers. How is that possible? It shouldn't be. Human pheromones shouldn't map onto any of these species' recognition systems. We have completely different evolutionary histories. K'tharan returned with ration packets, but instead of distributing them to her own cubs, she placed them all at Sarah's feet and stepped back, a gesture of submission that K'tharan simply didn't make. Sarah started handing out snacks. Okay, remember what we practiced. Gentle pause, no snatching, wait your turn. The cubs complied. 214 apex predator offspring, creatures that would grow up to be the galaxy's most dangerous hunters, waited patiently in line for a human kindergarten teacher to hand them food. They're treating her like a pack alpha, Zelax whispered. No. Not alpha, something else, something softer but equally respected. More predator parents were arriving, drawn by reports spreading through the summit. They took one look at the scene, cubs playing peacefully, organized in groups, responding to human instruction, and joined the protective circle that had formed around Sarah. A protective circle of the galaxy's deadliest parents, guarding a human. This is a paradigm collapse, Lirana announced, her academic composure completely shattered. Every model we have of predator behavior, maternal instincts, species-specific bonding, all of it is wrong. Or humans are the exception to rules we thought were universal. Khor'vax watched as Sarah taught a group of cubs how to share toys, how to take turns, how to express frustration without violence. The cubs were learning, adapting, responding to human social constructs that their own species had never developed. Lirana, he said slowly, what if humans aren't the exception? What if they're showing us something we forgot, something we lost when we became civilized? What do you mean? Look at them, he gestured at the scene. Every species here evolved parallel paths: solitary hunters, aggressive protection of young, no cross-species cooperation. But humans evolved something different. Cooperative child-rearing, Zilak said, his voice filled with awe. AlloParenting, humans raising young that aren't genetically theirs. I've read the anthropological studies, but I never understood the implications. They don't just tolerate other people's children, they're wired to care for them. A Vrexcal pup bit another cub. Not hard, just a play bite that got too rough. Sarah immediately intervened. No biting, even gentle bites can hurt. How would you feel if someone bit you? The pup looked ashamed. Actually ashamed. An emotion that Vrexcal cubs supposedly didn't develop until adolescence. We're witnessing something unprecedented, Lirana said quietly. Not just an anomaly, a fundamental difference in how humans relate to young. Any young, all young. They see a child, and their instinct isn't threat assessment, it's protection, nurture, teaching. Even when those children could kill them, Khor'vax added, watching Sarah let a K'tharan cub, complete with developing fangs and claws, climb into her lap for a story. The matriarchs and pack leaders weren't just tolerating this anymore, they were taking notes. Literally, several had pulled out recording devices documenting human childcare techniques. Protocol breakdown confirmed, Zilax announced unnecessarily. This shouldn't be possible across 127 unrelated species. Yet here we are. Sarah looked up, noticed the adults watching her. Oh, sorry, did you all want to join story time? There's room. The galaxy's most dangerous parents settled down around a human kindergarten teacher to learn how she did the impossible. Lirana's biological scanners had been running for 30 minutes straight, and the results made no sense. Ambassador Khor'vax, you need to see this. He moved to her display, leaving the circle of predator parents, who were now sitting cross-legged on the floor like students. What am I looking at? Sarah's pheromone signature. It's mapping onto caretaker recognition markers across every species present. Lirana's crystalline fingers trembled as she highlighted the data. Not perfectly. Human biochemistry is completely different from K'tharan or Zaxthari or any of them, but close enough that Cub's neurological systems are reading her as safe adult, across 127 different evolutionary tracks. That's impossible. I know it's impossible, yet the scanners don't lie. She pulled up comparison charts. Look, K'tharan cubs respond to specific pheromone combinations from their mothers. Vrexcal pups respond to completely different markers. There's no overlap in their recognition systems. Except for Sarah. She's triggering positive responses in all of them. Khor'vax watched as Sarah helped a tiny Thulkari cub who couldn't reach a toy on a high shelf. She lifted the cub gently, let it grab the toy, then set it back down with an encouraging smile. Good problem solving. You asked for help instead of getting frustrated. That's very grown up. The cub chirped happily and ran off to play. How are you doing this? Khor'vax asked, approaching Sarah directly. Our experts can't explain what we're seeing. Sarah looked up from where she was mediating another dispute between cubs. Doing what? Just watching kids. It's kind of my job. But they're not your species. They're apex predators. Their parents killed to protect them. Yet you're treating them like kids? Sarah finished. Gently redirecting a Morgesh pup who was getting too rough with a smaller cub, because that's what they are. Kids are kids. Doesn't matter what species. They need patience, clear boundaries, and someone who actually cares about them. But the biological differences... Sure, some of them have claws, some have venom, some phase through matter, but they all need the same basic things, she demonstrated as she spoke. Positive reinforcement when they do something good, gentle correction when they make mistakes, consistency, love. It's not complicated. Zilax had abandoned his datapad and was simply watching, his entire career in child development crumbling around him. In my species, we raise our young in isolation until they're old enough to contribute to the collective. We don't interact with them like this. Play with them. Teach them social skills. That sounds lonely, Sarah said, her voice soft with genuine sympathy. Kids need socialization. They need to learn empathy, sharing, how to handle their emotions. Watch. A K'tharan cub had just knocked over another cub's carefully built block tower. The victim began to wail, tiny claws extending in anger. Sarah moved between them smoothly. Hey, I know you're upset. It's frustrating when someone knocks down something you worked hard on. But remember what we talked about? Use your words. Tell them how you feel, the crying cub sniffled. Mad, sad tower gone. Good job expressing your feelings. Now, friend who knocked it down, was that an accident? The K'tharan cub nodded, looking guilty. Then what do we say? Sorry, the cub managed. Excellent. And when someone apologizes, we can accept it and forgive them. Should we rebuild the tower together? Both cubs nodded and began reconstructing the blocks, working cooperatively. By the ancients, Khor'vax whispered. She just taught them conflict resolution, emotional regulation, empathy, concepts my species doesn't develop until adulthood. Actually, Sarah said conversationally, humans do this all the time. We foster animals from other species constantly. Dogs, cats, birds. There's this whole community back on Earth dedicated to raising orphaned wildlife. We just see a baby that needs help and help it. Lirana's scanner fell from her hands, clattering on the floor. You raise other species young, voluntarily? Well, yeah, it's called fostering or adoption. We have whole systems for it. Sarah pulled up images on her datapad, human orphanages, foster care networks, adoption agencies. If a kid doesn't have parents or their parents can't care for them, other humans step in. It's normal. It's evolutionary suicide, Zilax burst out. Resources spent on unrelated offspring provide no genetic advantage. No species does this. It violates every principle of natural selection. Sarah shrugged. Maybe that's why we do it, because we can choose to be better than our biology. These little ones didn't ask to be born. They deserve love and care, regardless of whether they share our DNA. The predator parents were leaning forward now, absorbing every word. Kasara spoke up, her massive form somehow gentle. How do you teach them? My cubs become aggressive when frustrated. I punish aggression, but they don't learn. Punishment teaches fear, not understanding, Sarah explained. You want to teach them why aggression is wrong and give them better tools. Like, she turned to a group of cubs who were squabbling over toys. Hey, friends, we have 3 cubs and 2 toys. What can we do? Take turns, one cub chirped. Share, another suggested. Find different toy, a third offered. All great solutions. Let's try taking turns first, 5 minutes each, okay? The cubs agreed and settled down immediately. Kasara stared. They just accepted that? Calmly? Because they came up with the solution themselves. Kids are way more likely to follow rules they helped create. Sarah pulled out a chart from her bag, a colorful behavior chart with stickers. This is what I use in my classroom. Positive behaviors earn stickers. Enough stickers, they get a small prize. It teaches delayed gratification and reinforces good choices. You have a classroom, Khor'vax said slowly, with multiple children. How many? 24 this year. Mixed ages, 5 to 7 years old. 24. Zilax looked faint. You care for 24 human young simultaneously? Sure, that's pretty standard for kindergarten. Some classes have 30. Sarah glanced around at the 200-plus cubs now playing peacefully under her supervision. This is actually pretty calm compared to right after recess. Lirana was pulling up human childcare data, her hands shaking. Daycares, schools, summer camps, babysitters, extended family childcare. Humans have entire social structures dedicated to cooperative child rearing with non-parents. It takes a village to raise a child, Sarah quoted. Old human saying, we evolved knowing that kids need more than just biological parents. They need a whole community of caring adults. Across the chamber, something unprecedented was happening. Cubs from species that had been mortal enemies for millennia were playing together, sharing toys, taking turns, using gentle paws instead of claws. A Vrexkal pup offered a Zaxthari hatchling a toy. The hatchling accepted with a happy hiss. Their parents watched in stunned silence. Their species had been at war for 300 years. "She's teaching them to override their instincts," Khor'vax breathed. "Not suppress them, transform them, channel aggression into play, predatory focus into learning, competition into cooperation." "Through nurture," Zilax added, his voice filled with awe. "Humans believe nurture can override nature, and they're proving it right now." The matriarchs and pack leaders were taking notes furiously, recording everything. One broodmother raised her hand, actually raised her hand like a student. "Yes," Sarah called on her. "How do you maintain patience when cubs are difficult?" "Oh, they're not being difficult. They're just being kids. Their brains are still developing. They're learning impulse control, emotional regulation, cause and effect. When they mess up, it's not malice. It's inexperience." Sarah smiled. "You just remember they're doing their best with the tools they have. Your job is to give them better tools." Khor'vax watched his entire species' parenting philosophy collapse. The Varesh raised young in isolation, taught them through punishment and reward, prepared them for individual survival. Humans raised young in communities, taught them through patience and example, prepared them to care for each other. "We've been doing it wrong," he whispered. "For millennia. We've all been doing it wrong." Lirsana's final analysis appeared on the main display, and the entire summit chamber fell silent. Reading it. Human Parenting Analysis. Final report. Subject: Sarah Jackson, Homo sapiens. Evolutionary adaptations. Detected: patience threshold, 847% above galactic average. Threat assessment override when young present. Absolute protective instinct trigger. All juvenile life forms, regardless of species. Nurturing behavior. Involuntary response to distress signals across taxa. Aggression suppression near young. Complete autonomic override. Conclusion: humans. Evolved superparenting as survival strategy. "This can't be right," a Thulkari pack leader protested. "These metrics suggest humans are designed to care for offspring that aren't theirs." "We are," Sarah said simply, settling a dispute between cubs with practiced ease. Early humans lived in harsh environments, high infant mortality, lots of orphans. Groups that cared for all the children survived better than groups that didn't. So we evolved to just care about all kids. Zilax pulled up evolutionary data from Earth: AlloParenting, cooperative breeding, extended family structures. Human children require intensive care for nearly 2 decades. No single-parent pair could manage that alone. So humans evolved to share childcare across the entire community. "But the risk," Kasara protested. "Caring for young that don't share your genetics wastes resources." "Does it?" Sarah asked gently. "Those kids grow up remembering you cared for them. They help care for your kids. They contribute to the community. Everyone's children survive better when everyone helps raise them." She smiled. "Besides, every kid deserves love. That shouldn't be conditional on DNA." A Khor'vathi cub suddenly lunged at Sarah, testing her, tiny mandibles extended, acid sacs preparing to spray. Every parent in the room tensed. Sarah caught the cub gently but firmly, redirecting the aggressive motion into a hug. "Hey, we don't bite. I know you're testing boundaries, but that's not safe. Can you tell me what you're feeling?" The cub, surprised by the calm response, clicked uncertainly. "Wanted to see if you scared." "I understand. You wanted to know if I was really safe or just pretending. But there are better ways to check. You can use your words or watch how I act, or ask the other cubs if they feel safe. Attacking isn't how we solve problems, okay?" The cub nodded slowly, then relaxed into her arms, purring. She redirected aggression without punishment, Zilax breathed. She acknowledged the emotion, validated it, then offered alternative behaviors. The cub learned trust and impulse control in 30 seconds. It's called de-escalation, Sarah explained, setting the cub down to play. You don't respond to aggression with aggression. That just teaches them might makes right. You stay calm, show them you're not a threat, then teach them better ways to handle their feelings. Lorana was frantically updating her analysis. Ambassador, this is profound. Humans don't just tolerate young, they're neurologically wired to protect them. Her threat assessment override is so complete that even when a cub attacked her, her first response was to teach, not defend. Because she's not scared of them, Khor'vax realized. She sees past the claws and fangs to the child underneath. Her nurturing instinct overrides her survival instinct. A K'tharan cub started crying, the piercing wail that triggered attack responses in adults. Sarah immediately knelt beside the distressed cub, voice soothing. Hey, you're okay. What's wrong, sweetie? Scared. Too many big people. Too loud. That's completely valid. Big groups can be overwhelming. Let's find you a quiet corner, okay? You can take a break until you feel better. She created a small, quiet space with cushions, dimmed the nearby lights. This is your calm-down corner. Stay here as long as you need. No one will bother you. The cub settled immediately, the crying stopping. Emotional regulation, Zilax whispered. She's teaching a K'tharan cub, a species that expresses all emotions through violence, how to recognize and manage overwhelming feelings. This is revolutionary. The matriarchs were pressing closer now, abandoning all pretense of observation. Kasara spoke for all of them. Teach us. These methods, gentleness, patience, this talking about feelings, teach us how to raise our young this way. Of course, Sarah lit up with genuine enthusiasm. I'd be happy to share. It's not complicated, really. You just have to remember that kids are people. Small, inexperienced people who are doing their best to figure out a confusing world. Your job isn't to control them, it's to guide them. She stood, addressing the assembled parents. Human children are born helpless. We can't survive without adults caring for us for years. So we evolved to be really, really good at raising kids, not just our own, but any kids who need us. We domesticated wolves because we saw wolf puppies and thought those need protecting. Same with cats, horses, literally hundreds of species. Humans see young and think, must care for, before we think, is this dangerous? Khor'vax felt something fundamental click into place. That's why you succeeded where we failed. We advanced technologically, but stayed tribal emotionally. Humans advanced by expanding their tribe to include everyone. Well, we're still working on it, Sarah admitted. But yeah, basically, we figured out that cooperation beats competition in the long run, and that starts with how you treat kids. Lorana pulled up Galactic childcare statistics, orphanages that were essentially warehouses, species that abandoned excess young, cultures where children were raised in isolation or fear. Then she pulled up human systems, foster care, adoption, community support, free education, child advocacy. Every human culture has developed systems to ensure all children are cared for, she announced. Regardless of genetic relation, they've made it a moral imperative. Because it's the right thing to do, Sarah said simply. Kids didn't ask to be born. They deserve safety, love, education, and someone who believes in them, all of them, every single one. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Kasara, apex predator and proud matriarch, bowed her head to the human. Will you teach us? Not just techniques, but this philosophy, this way of seeing young? Absolutely. Sarah smiled at the cubs playing peacefully. Around her, 214 apex predator offspring who had learned sharing and kindness in a single afternoon. Every kid deserves a good teacher, even the bitey ones. The Galactic Predator Summit reconvened with a single unanimous vote. Humans were hereby approved for cross-species childcare and education. Furthermore, human parenting philosophy would be integrated into every species' child development programs. Sarah Jackson, kindergarten teacher, had accidentally revolutionized galactic civilization. She just wanted to make sure the kids were okay. 3 hours later, the Galactic Childcare Standards Committee was in emergency session, rewriting protocols that had stood for millennia. Human parenting philosophy was being integrated into every document, every training program, every species child development framework. Khor'vax found Sarah in a corner of the chamber, reading a picture book to a mixed group of cubs who hung on her every word. He waited until she finished the story before approaching. "Miss Jackson, I owe you an apology." Sarah looked up, curious. "For what?" "The Viresh, my people. We have strict protocols prohibiting humans from interacting with our young. We classified your species as potential predators. Threats." His scales flushed with shame. "We were wrong. Catastrophically wrong." "Oh," Sarah's expression softened. "You were just protecting your kids." "I get it, but hey, now you know humans are safe, right?" "More than safe. You're what we should have been." Khor'vax gestured at the peaceful scene around them. "We spent millennia advancing technology, building empires, conquering space, but we forgot how to care for our own young with genuine compassion." "You never forgot." Lirana approached with her final documentation. "Sarah, the council has a proposal. We want you to establish the first cross-species kindergarten, a facility where young from all species can learn together, using human educational methods." Sarah's face lit up. "Really? That would be amazing! Oh my gosh, the curriculum possibilities. We could teach empathy across species, cultural exchange for toddlers, cooperative play structures that account for different physical abilities." "Your enthusiasm is noted," Lirana said, her crystalline form practically glowing with excitement. "I've been documenting your patience levels. They exceed all known species by orders of magnitude. You've been teaching for 6 hours straight, and you're more energetic now than when you started." "Well, yeah, I love my job." Sarah gently redirected a cub who was climbing too high. "Gentle climbing, remember, we don't want anyone getting hurt." Zilax arrived with a datapad full of requests. "Sarah, I have 43 worlds requesting human childcare consultants. PredatorSpecies wanting to learn your methods. Is there any way to scale this?" "Train teachers," Sarah said immediately. "I can develop a curriculum for teaching human early childhood, education methods. You'll need to adapt it for each species' specific needs, but the core principles are universal. Patience, positive reinforcement, emotional validation, gentle correction." "Inside voices, please," she called to a group of cubs getting too loud, demonstrating even as she taught. "Remember, we use our inside voices when we're indoors." The cubs immediately quieted down. K'tharan approached with several other matriarchs. "We want to learn, all of us. Can you teach us to be like you, with our cubs?" "Of course, but you already love your cubs, that's obvious. We just need to give you better tools." Sarah pulled out her bag, extracting teaching materials. "Here, I have extra emotion cards, behavior charts, and some books on child development. Start with these. Focus on validating feelings before correcting behavior. And remember, patience, consistency, love." The matriarchs accepted the materials like sacred texts. "Every kid deserves a good teacher," Sarah added. "Even the bitey ones." "Especially the bitey ones. They need the most help learning better ways to express themselves." As the summit began to wind down, cubs started showing separation anxiety. Several clung to Sarah, chirping and whimpering. I know, it's hard to say goodbye, but I'll see you next week, okay? Same time, same place. We can play more games and read more stories." She gave each cub individual attention, making sure they felt secure. And you can practice everything we learned today with your parents. Show them how good you are at sharing and using gentle pause. Gradually, reluctantly, the cubs returned to their parents. But they kept looking back at Sarah, already missing their teacher. Khor'vax watched the exodus, understanding finally settling over him. Humans built their entire civilization on this, didn't they? Cooperative child rearing, caring for all young, not just genetic offspring. That's why you survived your death world. That's why you reached the stars. That and coffee, lots of coffee. Sarah checked her chronometer. Speaking of which, I should head home. I need to prep tomorrow's lesson plan for my actual class. What are you teaching tomorrow? Liarana asked, fascinated by the mundane detail. Sharing in basic shapes, maybe some finger painting if they're good. Sarah gathered her bag. It's amazing how kids learn best through play and creativity. Zilax looked shocked. You're teaching shapes? After today? After revolutionizing galactic childcare standards? Well, yeah, my kids need to learn their shapes. That's important too. Sarah smiled. Big picture stuff is great, but education happens one day at a time, one lesson at a time. That's how you build a foundation. As she headed for the exit, Kasara called out, "Will you teach us finger painting next week?" Sarah turned, grinning. Absolutely. Fair warning, though. It gets messy. Really messy. Bring smocks. The most dangerous predators in the galaxy immediately began, researching what smocks were and where to acquire them. Khor'vax found himself laughing, actual laughing, at the absurdity and beauty of it all. The galaxy's apex predators, preparing for finger painting lessons from a human kindergarten teacher. New Galactic initiative approved, Liarana announced formally. The Human Early Childhood Education Program will be implemented across all member worlds. We'll start with training programs based on Miss Jackson's methods. Good, Khor'vax said. It's long overdue. Sarah was already in the corridor, pulling out her personal communicator. Khor'vax watched her type a message, then smile at the screen before putting it away. Later, Liarana would access that message through diplomatic channels, wanting to document everything about this historic day. Weird day at work. Taught baby aliens instead of my usual class. They're actually pretty sweet. One tried to bite me, but we worked through it. Same techniques as with human kids. Consistency and patience. Who knew xenopsychology was basically just kindergarten with extra steps? Anyway, starting CrossSpecies daycare program apparently. Also need to buy 200 smocks for next week. Where do you even get smocks for aliens? The revolution in galactic childcare, the complete restructuring of how billions of beings would raise their young, had been started by a human who treated all children exactly the same. With patience. With love. With the fundamental belief that every kid, regardless of species or claws or venom or phase-shifting ability, deserved someone who cared about them. The galaxy would never be the same. Sarah Jackson just hoped the alien parents remembered to pack snacks next week.